Welcome to Over 50 and Frank, the podcast that says the quiet parts out loud. I'm Shannon, also known as Frank when I drop the filter. Around here, we talk about aging, menopause, wellness, and life after 50 with honesty, humor, and zero apologies. If you're over 50 and craving real talk, pull up a chair and send to a friend. Today, we're talking about something many of us deal with every single day, that critical voice in our head. I'm joined by Jackie Elliot, the author of The Silent Bully, a journey from abusive brain chatter to self-love. She talks about what she calls abusive brain chatter, that inner voice that tells us we are not enough. In this episode, we unpack where that voice comes from, how it affects our confidence as we age, and what we can do to quiet it. Jackie shares simple tools and real-life insight to help us shift our thinking and build genuine self-love. If you've ever been your own harshest critic, this conversation will feel like a deep exhale. Let's get into it. I have been loving your Instagram posts, Jackie. How did you come up with this book?
Well, this book, I think, was in me for, when I was about 42, and I realized that the issue in my life was abusive brain chatter. I set out on a journey to do this, to change it. And then when I started life coaching and spiritual coaching, and I realized that I'm not alone in this. This seems to be the blocking point for a lot of people, this abusive brain chatter. And I felt that some of the work that I'd been doing spiritually and in life coaching really, really helped people. So I felt like, wow, this is a book and I need to write this. It was kind of a divine inspiration, you know what I mean?
So what is abusive brain chatter in just simple terms? And you can be broad with, you could also be lengthy with it too, but what is it exactly?
Well, abusive brain chatter is the negative voice, the inner bully in our head that is self-emotional abuse. It goes beyond just things like, stupid me, I forgot to turn off the stove. It actually is the talk, the chatter that holds you back. And you don't even know it's happening. For a lot of people, if you are in a dead-end job, maybe chances are you have abusive brain chatter that's telling you you can't go any further. If you're a creative person, boy, that abusive brain chatter is really loud. It's the one who tells you, oh, you can't be an artist. This is terrible. How can you write a book? No one's going to listen to you. It's imposter syndrome, which a lot of people have. A high percentage of people, especially successful people, have imposter syndrome. So it's not just negative chatter, but it's negative chatter on steroids that holds you back, where you are the victim and you are the bully.
When I first started seeing you promote your book, I was like, I don't have that. I don't have abusive brain chatter. And then the next day, I got invited to a local influencer event. And I was like, oh, this was the first time. And I showed up and I was like, oh, why am I here? I just was in the back of my head, it was all why am I even here? These people, they take amazing pictures. They know a lot about food. I'm on a GLP-1 and I hardly eat. But they had invited me because I did some promotions for downtown Bend. And I did it out of the kindness of my heart. And I love Bend and I want to promote Bend. But they invited me because they felt there could be something for me to offer. And I went to a few of these meetups and I just felt like, oh my goodness, I don't take good pictures. I don't have big followings. Someone made a comment well, you don't even have 10,000 followers, which that doesn't really matter. And so all these things, and I was like, oh yeah, I have the brain chatter. To certain things I do, but then there's times I'm I feel like as I've gotten older, the brain chatter has quieted down. So with that being said, do you feel like there's an age group, or do you feel like this affects everyone? Do you feel like it gets better as you age, like it goes away as you age, or just never goes away? What's your opinion on that?
I think it never goes away. We all have it. I still, I'm writing this book and I'm still having to deal with it. Oh, you're an imposter. You can't write, blah, blah, blah. So it's not that it goes away. It's that we learn to manage it. And I think when we're young, there's different things that happen. When you're young, oftentimes it'll hold you back from your career, from relationships, from, I think we care so much about what people think about us when we're young. As we get older, we realize that's not as important as what we think about ourselves. So I do think it shifts a little in aging, especially as you get my age, which is 73, where you go, I don't have much time to waste. I'm not going to spend time worrying about anything other than other than self-love, how to please myself and take care of myself. But also in aging, it comes up about aging. There's different issues that will trigger it. I think when you're in your 40s, you're into parenting. Am I a good parent? Money mindset. Can I make a lot of money? I'm not that good, blah, blah, blah. And as we get older, I see in my generation, people have abusive brain chatter about the process of aging, about, oh, I look terrible. I can't look at myself in the mirror. Oh my God, I have to do something. We get on Zoom and we start doing this. And, in fact, I came on, I went, oh God, this doesn't have a filter like Facebook. And, I had to talk to myself for a minute and go, who cares? This is what you look like. I was thinking the other day that I want to know, the work I've done around abusive brain chatter has really served me in aging, because I want to be able to look at my face and say, wow, this is a 73-year-old face. I don't have a lot of time. I need to do what I need to do. And if I look at my face and I look like I'm 40 or 30 or whatever, and I have no thing against, people who want plastic surgery. If that's going to help their self-talk, then, so be it. But I've seen that the more you do that, the more you don't accept the process of aging, which then triggers abusive brain chatter. I tell people, I think I write about it in my book, that, when I'm looking in the mirror and I start to see myself, I think I even did an Instagram post about that, and I start to criticize my face, I stop immediately and I start looking at my face in a whole different way. I start looking at my family ancestry, because as I get older, I start looking like my grandmother, like my father, And so I use that opportunity to smile and say, wow, what a life is in these eyes. What a life is on this face. And I actually, say, hi, Mom, or hi, Dad. And I do it a lot. I don't go, oh, I look like my father. I got my father's nose. Well, instead I go, yep, I got my father's nose. And God, I see you in here, Dad. So I think it changes as we age. But I think we all have things that can trip us up and make us trigger our abusive brain chatter.
I have to say that you framing it as you looking in the mirror and saying, hi Mom, hi Dad. I lost my mom when I was 21, and I have so many people, and really going to try not to cry, but I have so many people that when I see them, I've gone, some years without seeing a lot of my family, and I've gone back and visited recently. They'll say like, oh, you look just like your mom. And that is how I'm going to frame things when I look in the mirror, because my mom didn't live past 47. This is what my mom would have looked like. This is what she would have looked like. And I have a lot of people that say, oh, you look just like your mom. I got really good skin from my mother. I take care of my skin. And one of the things that I haven't been dead set against it, but Botox and fillers have been something I've really, really tried to resist. But then lately I'm like, oh, the forehead, the wrinkled foreheads and the lines right here. That's just a sign of wisdom. That's what I feel that really is. And that those signs are just kind of like when I was 60 pounds overweight, or after I had my daughter and my body just didn't feel the greatest. I have always thought that I kind of looked good, but I knew I could improve. But especially after having children, like that's a badge of honor, because a lot of women don't have that. They didn't birth a child, and the stretch marks and things like that are kind of those badges of honor. When did you realize your inner voice was hurting you?
Well, I talk about in my book that I had this aha moment. I'd done a lot of therapy since I was 16. I'd been in therapy, and so obviously therapy, it wasn't working enough. I was still stuck, and I was 42 years old, and I was at home, a single mother. I had left a toxic relationship twice, the same relationship. I had married and remarried my ex-husband. And I was in bed binge watching TV. This was before Netflix, so you had to watch soap operas and things like that. I was binge watching soap operas. And I had a day off of work, and I had severe asthma. And I always had it from the time I was like 4 or 5. But this time it was really bad, which was also part of my abusive brain chatter, you're weak. The people who are in movies, you know the nerdy boy because he carries an inhaler, right? There's something nerdy or, weird about people with asthma. Well, I couldn't breathe, and literally, and I was eating used to eat like a full box of toasted mini wheats where one side was sweetened and one side was the other. And I would crunch on the sweetened side, and the crunch, I needed that crunch. And then I would, eat the other side. And I was in bed and I just looked at myself, the inhaler, the remote control, mini wheats. And I just said, and I was single and I felt horrible. I felt like I could never find a healthy relationship. And I just said, I can't do this anymore. Something's wrong. I don't know my way out of this, but I am beating myself up. I am, saying horrible things to myself. You're a terrible mother. All of those things were going through my head. And it was just like that moment that I went, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. I can't listen to this anymore. And I literally got on my knees. I literally got out of bed and got on my knees. And, I wasn't a particularly religious person, but I was spiritual. And I got on my knees and I said, I don't know my way out of this. I can't think my way out of this. I need help. I need someone to show me what to do. And at that moment, the message came clear that I needed support. I needed to get back into therapy. I needed to get support groups for my eating disorder. I needed to change the way I was thinking. I was working 60 hours to prove that I was worth 40 hours of pay because I felt like I just lucked into this job. And, oh my God, they're going to find out one day that I'm not really as good as they think. And so I was working overtime. I was the first one there, last one to leave. And it was like at that moment I said, okay, I'm working 40 hours a week so that I can take my lunch breaks and go get the support I need. And that started me on that path. It was like, enough of hatred, enough of this abuse. I knew at that point it was abuse. And I also knew that, after, working through all of this and getting a spiritual center, which is what really saved me. And I say that's really, really important. And I see that even with my life coaching client, Shannon, is that sometimes you can't get out of here. And so you have to go here. And so that was the shift for me. It was like, if I stay in here, I'm going to beat myself up and I'm going to find all the reasons why it can't change. But if I go here, I can slowly follow this guide. And this guide will guide me back to who I am and what I am. So that's what really started me on this journey. It was I just realized, this is abusive brain chatter. And then, of course, when I started working with clients, oh my God, there's an exercise I do with my clients where I let both parts of themselves talk. So if you have somebody who's, wants to excel, but there's a fear part holding them back, then there's a lot of, that's when, your abusive brain chatter is worse. You want to go take a chance and your abusive brain chatter now is going to come up and start holding you back. And so I allow both of those parts to talk, with my clients, and I write it down. It's a process called voice dialogue, which is really powerful. And I would do that with clients, and I would hear talk that I thought mine was bad, and so then I realized that this has got to be a movement. This has got to be a self-love movement, especially for women. And because, we are the ones who beat ourselves pretty bad. And anyway, so that's kind of how this whole thing happened for me.
That is, wow, that there was just one moment in your life that you can go back and remember. I feel like I have had several moments like that in my life. And I kind of want to go back to the whole, the spiritual, getting out of here and going to here. I have a spiritual mentor, and they said that when you hand your worries over to the creator, a higher power, God, whatever you want to call that, it's like taking off a robe. You take off a robe and you're like, I release this worry, this anxiety, you take it off. And whenever I'm in parts of my life where I'm like, if it's my kids, if it's my job, if it's my health, I'm just like, I am taking off this robe and I'm giving it to whatever it's called. Mm-hmm. For me, it's like, I'll just say God because that's just easy. But it's like you're taking it off and you're just giving it to that person. And you're saying I release you But sometimes it's hard because it's like you'll keep coming back, but you also have to trust that that entity is there and guiding you. And the entity can be just about anything. But this isn't a spiritual podcast. Not going to go down that route.
It is important to say that, to note that. I mean, as a spiritual coach, I've had clients who they couldn't name it. They wouldn't name it God because they'd grown up with a punishing God. And I had one client who, when we did our spiritual work, she tapped into Glinda, the witch of the east or west, I don't know which was, the bubble, the image of the bubble coming down and surrounding her. And so, it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't have to be anything, but we have to get out of our heads. We have to, and into our hearts.
Yeah. Yeah. Out of our heads and into our hearts. I love that. Where does the inner critic usually come from? Like this abusive chatter. Where do you feel it comes from?
It comes from our core beliefs, and our core beliefs come from our family, our society, our friends. It comes when we're young. One of the exercises I do in my coaching practice is to take people back to where they lost their soul. It's just in their mind. Go back to where you lost that person that you were, that pure, loving soul that you came into this earth as. Then after that point, we bring it back, and then people get to own it now. This is yours now. This is your soul. So you get to take care of this little person. What usually happens is that people go back and recognize their core beliefs started at some point, like around 5 or 6, where things happen in your life where you may have been the third child, or and your mother said, "You are so perfect. You are so sweet." Like in my case, I was the angel. And so I got this core belief that I couldn't speak up for myself, because if I did, then I may not, then people wouldn't like me and I wouldn't be the angel anymore. So no wonder I had asthma. I mean, I held my breath. I kept myself, shut down for a lot of my life. And a lot of that, my mother attempted suicide when I was like 4 or 5. So that also created a core belief that if I was bad, she would kill herself. And that, so I started these core beliefs. And in my case, I had a mother who also, she loved me. She loved all of us. We had 4 girls, but she had a very, very negative abusive brain chatter. And when a parent does that, they often put that on their kids. For example, beauty was real important to her. If, beauty was everything. And if she wasn't beautiful, if I wasn't beautiful, that she wasn't a successful mother. So she always tried fixing me, taking me to get my nails done, taking me to beauty school, to charm school. So the message I got indirectly was that I'm not good enough. Who I am, who this person Jackie was, this little soul that I had, was not good enough unless I looked good enough on the outside. And it followed me through life. And I think that happens to a lot of people. If you think back to your childhood, what are some of the core beliefs that you got? In terms of, I'm doing some work on money mindset. That's a big one. We get our core beliefs about money, about our ability to provide, from our money mindset. So if you go back and you look at these core beliefs, that's a real key to where some of this chatter comes from. So I break it down in the book as aware. Be aware of what you're saying to yourself. Believe in that find that spiritual center, and challenge your core beliefs, because those are what fuel you. And it's kind of funny. It just comes up, like, because of my asthma, which I don't have now, it's pretty much under control. At the age of 42, I stopped having asthma attacks. Isn't that a surprise when I started, changing my life and opening up to who I am? But I had this belief that I wasn't an athlete because I was weak. I was a weak person. I couldn't breathe. If I went outside to run, or if I did anything, I'd have to bring my inhaler, and I was weak. And so at the age of 50, I realized, wait a minute, I always wanted to do a triathlon. I'm not weak. I just have to figure out a way to do it. It's not that I can't do it. I just have to figure out how to do it. And I'm going to challenge that belief. And so that's what I did. I joined a triathlon, and I will tell you, I came in last and had to be rescued from the water, but I finished. And after that, I said to myself, Okay, so this is how it goes. It goes, okay. It's not that you can't do it, it's how can you do it? And that was a big shift in my life. From then on, that's what got me writing this book. It's not that I can't write a book, it's how can I write this book? 15 minutes a day. Start writing down your thoughts. So those are what we have to do. We have to say, where did that voice come from that told me I couldn't do this? Where did that voice tell me that I had to stay in a relationship because I wasn't going to be able to support myself? Where did that voice come that told me I couldn't run a marathon? I couldn't do what I wanted. I couldn't change careers. I couldn't paint a picture. Where did that come from? And I'm doing the artist way again. I don't know if you've ever done the artist way, but it is life-changing.
I'm doing it right now.
Oh, you are?
Yeah,
oh,
I'm
how
doing it
funny.
right now.
Okay, so she talks a lot about those beliefs for creative people. And that's really true. If you're creative and you think you've got this voice telling you you can't do it, or it's worthless to spend time on writing music, or that wasn't supported in you. In my case, I was a very creative person, but my creativity wasn't supported when I was a child. It was beauty, that was the outer looks, that was more important. So I have to go back and I have to challenge that and say, wait a minute, creativity is part of who I am. And so I paint a picture badly. It's still part of who I am. Anyway, so that's my story on it. And that's what I think everybody has to do. And that's how you talk to your abusive brain chatter.
When you were bringing up like the core beliefs of things, I always say like, oh, I don't have any trauma. As somebody, we were talking about this at a retreat one time, and I was like, I don't really have any trauma. And she's like, well, were your parents divorced? And I was like, yeah, but my parents were always supportive of things that I did. And then they're like, well, that's one mark against you. Like, your parents are divorced. You definitely have trauma. And I was like, no, I don't. And then I start thinking about it. Like, my mom was, left with 3 kids under the age of 10, and she didn't work. And so her thing was, you were going to get good grades, you were going to go to college, and you were going to take care of yourself because you're never going to let a man take care of you. And boy, has that haunted me my whole life.
Really?
You're going to be a leader. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. And then there's just times in my marriage that my husband is like, why don't I even try? You've got it. Like, you've got it. And it's just like, oh, that is just, things that I've been married 20 years and we have 2 kids, but it's just like, I know exactly where this comes from. I have to take care of myself because I can't let anybody take care of me. So when I get sick and somebody has to take care of me, it is super hard. It is super hard for someone to take care of me.
Right.
And
so you might have,
but I have to
some, you probably have some critical chatter around that if that starts happening. Oh, God, I'm weak, or I can't, I can't let anyone know I'm weak, or, what if you wanted to take 6 months off and go to Hawaii? Well, God, no, So in that respect, it holds you back. And that's where that dialogue is really good, Shannon, where you dialogue with both parts of yourself, the one that wants you, wants to be strong, and then the other one that maybe is okay being taken care of and maybe wants to feel what that feels like,
A few months back, my son was having a challenging time and he went on a trip, and we came back and I just was so overwhelmed by getting the bags unpacked, and oh my God, we had nothing for dinner, and I was spiraling in the kitchen, and my husband's like, I got it. What do you need? Like, what do you need? Like, I'm like, can you just make dinner? Like, and he's like, okay. And I was like, okay, I just need to ask for the help. And I can't sit here and be resentful because it's not my husband's fault. So, I mean, as much as I want to say it's his fault, it's not. It's not his fault. I know exactly where that comes from. So,
yeah.
I know exactly. Me. So what is the first step to quieting that abusive brain chatter?
So that's why I wrote the ABC, so that it's real easy for you. The first step is to be aware when it comes up, and also be aware of that the talk that you're doing. I called it abusive brain chatter because I want that to kind of stick in your gut a little bit. Abusive brain chatter. Oh, I don't have abusive brain chatter. Well, it is abusive. If you belittle yourself, if you isolate yourself, if you gaslight yourself and say, oh, I have to do all of this, and, and there's no one to help me. And, if you belittle or hold yourself back, those are signs of emotional abuse. So that's important to first take the step to recognize what is emotional abuse. We normalize it. You know, I can't tell you how many women, when I go out to lunch with women, now it's just like nails on a chalkboard when people will say negative things about themselves in front of me because it's just my work. But I can't tell you how many times women do that. And they're not even aware. When you go out to lunch, you just count how many times people say things that are negative or that are bullying or self-abusive or critical. So that's the first thing. Start becoming aware. Get that in your head. So that you know that it's not normal. It's not a normal state of being to be berated, even if it's by yourself. And so that's where I would start. And then, like I said, take it to the next level of taking some time through meditation, through spirituality, through journaling, to connect with the voice that is loving. I write back and forth to my voice. Now that I'm doing the morning pages, it's a lot easier. I'll just write to myself and then write back, dear Jackie, blah, 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 blah. And so I get a lot of information, a lot of guidance that way. And then, like I said, just remember ABCs and then start knowing that it's okay. It's okay to say, no, this, no, I don't want that. That's, I don't want to hear that right now. You need to kind of quiet down a little there. I got this.
I love that. I want to talk about the artist way a little bit. One of the things that was kind of eye-opening for me was, and I think it's in chapter 6, she says, before you go to sleep at night, you're supposed to ask for guidance. And I don't know how I missed that up until chapter 6. And it clicked like, okay, I'm supposed to ask for guidance and then wake up and do morning pages. Like, it was chapter 6. And I was just like, whoa. So that has been like a practice that I've recently put into place. The morning pages are hard for me because I am the type of person that gets up, gets ready, and gets out the door. And then I go on about my day. And then about 1 o'clock, I realize I didn't do morning pages. I didn't do my affirmations. I didn't do my visualization that I normally do. And so I've been trying to figure out how to get those things done in the morning. So I'm wondering, do you have any tips for that?
Well, again, I always say to myself, don't say I can't, say how can I? And so I would brainstorm around that by saying, maybe I'll set my alarm. And, I sleep late, so it's really hard for me because I get up and, I get up at like 9 or 9:30 and then I have to do my morning pages and then it's 10 o'clock and, all kinds of things are going. So just set the alarm and to show up to say morning pages. That's just a reminder, like morning pages.
It seems that simple, right?
Right. But I know it is. And that's why that is part of the hardest part of the work. And I get out of journaling. I get out of the routine. I want to, and then I forget. And then sometimes at night before I go to bed, I like to write my gratitudes and do all of that. And I don't do that, but I don't beat myself up. That's the difference. I don't go, oh, you're so off. Like, okay, how can I remember tomorrow? Okay, so I got to bring the book to my bedside. This week I went out and got some postcards to remind me, affirmations, putting notes. Affirmations are really, really helpful. Like, I am a person who does my morning pages. I am a person who keeps my commitments. Oh, then I have to do this. So those are the kind of tricks that I use. But again, I don't beat myself up if I don't do it. It's like, okay, I've got my life to do this, but, I know it makes me feel better. Now I have to figure out how.
I don't beat myself up about it. I'm at the stage where I'm building things in my life, and I will put morning pages on my calendar or set an alarm, and I do like to sleep in, but I realize that there's like 2 things I need to do every day, and one of them is my morning pages, because when I was doing them, I was it really, really helped. And number 2, lift weights, or get some sort of exercise. And I feel like I'm just going to have to be like, I have to put it in my calendar and I can't let anything go over those 2 times, because I feel like the morning pages help keep me sane. And B, the weightlifting and the exercise are going to keep me healthier and stronger and out of the nursing home. As Dr. Marie Claire Haver, if you watch her, she always is like, exercise and lifting weights is going to keep you out of the nursing home. So I feel like it just came to me. I just need to just put it in the calendar and make sure nothing gets scheduled on it. Like that I leave my office at 4:00 to go work out, and that before I do anything at the office, when I get there, that I need to just do my morning pages. So I feel like I figured it out. I'll let you know how that goes, but it's just kind of like...
Yeah, well, the other thing, you raised a really good point. And, it's so funny because that's what my morning pages were about. I'm in Mexico right now. I live in Mexico half the year. And I love the exercise in Bend. I go to Pilates. I go to the pool and do the circuit pool. I go to lift weights. And, my exercise routine is great. Well, since I've gotten to Mexico here, I haven't gotten back into the swing of things. So my morning pages this morning were about, okay, how do I get back into the swing? Well, they do have a public pool here. Well, I'm not going to commit to the public pool, but I am going to commit to taking a taxi up there, because you take taxi, and looking at it and signing up. That's what I'm going to commit to today. Just going up there, taking a look at it, and seeing how I can get a membership. The gyms here are very dark and claustrophobic, but there is one gym that has windows. I'm not particularly fond of the people who run it, but I said to myself, okay, you have to go to that nice gym. So today I'm going to go over to that gym. Once again, I'm not going to work out. I'm just going to go over to that gym, get all the information about the hours and everything. So I take little baby steps to get me back. Because, if you get out of the routine of exercising for 2 weeks, it's hard to get back. So that's what I was asking myself today. How? Okay, how do I get back to exercising? How do I get back to, doing all the things I know I need to do? Tai Chi, I have an online Tai Chi course. So, it's again, not saying I can't, but saying, how can I?
How can I? I love that. We're talking about this, and one of the things that came to mind was, is it too late for somebody in their 60s or 70s? Is it too late to get rid of the abusive brain chatter, even like 80? Do you think that there's a time limit on when it's too late?
Oh, God, no. In fact, the older you get, the more I always say, tick-tock, 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 tick-tock. Now is the time. I don't want to spend... What I said at 42 is I don't want the second half of my life to be like the first half of my life. I just don't want that to happen. Well, I look at myself at 73 and I say, God, maybe I have 10, 13 years, maybe of good health or whatever. This has to be the most important thing in my life. Self-love has to be the most important thing in my life. It just has to be. Everything has to go through that filter of self-love. Is this feeding my soul? I want my soul to go completely like I feel like at this point I've lived a wonderful life. The last 42 years have been wonderful. I'm in a happy marriage. I live in two wonderful places. I travel. I wrote a book. I ran a business. All of this happened after the age of 42. And so I feel like now, okay, so what am I going to do next? I've got all of this time, so I have to keep feeding myself self-love. And creativity is self-love to me. I'm going to take a jewelry making class in this weekend, and I'm going to take a watercolor class. Everything that feeds my soul. And I think that's even more important as you get older. I hate to see people. I have friends who really, they're still stuck. And I say, wow, but you're in your 70s. Don't be stuck. You don't have much more time. The last thing you want to say is, God, I had regrets. So I think it's even more important when you get older.
I love how at 42 you had this epiphany about your life, because at 42 I had an epiphany about life that I was not, and this is going to go back to kind of what I said earlier about my mom, that I wasn't going to let someone else dictate the way I made money, aka bosses, because I have always had this, in the past have had this thing where I had a boss that just didn't like me or didn't agree with things I said, with the exception of about 2 or 3 that I can think of that actually really helped me in my career. And at 42, I lost my dream job, and I gave myself like a weekend to be sad about it. And on that following Monday, a mentor of mine came and said, hey, I think you should start your own business. I'm going to give you a client. And then I already had like another client that I was kind of working on the side because I've always been like a side hustle girl. And ever since that was when I was 42. And ever since then, I feel like my life started again. Like it was like brand new, this whole new Shannon started. And I read the book, You're a Badass. And one of the things she said in there is along the lines of most people slough through life, and you're not going to be the kind of person that's going to slough through life now after reading this book. And I always think about, is that person sloughing through life, or are they really taking the bull by the horns and like living it and living to their full potential? And so I feel like every year since then has gotten better. Even during the pandemic, when things weren't the greatest for people, I still tried to find like what is good and how can I keep reaching and reaching and not slough through life. Because it's easy to just sit back and be like, oh, poor me. This thing happened to me and blah, 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 blah. But it's like, no, like I am in control and I'm going to do everything possible. I lost my uncle unexpectedly last June, and he was in his mid 60s, weeks from retiring.
Oh.
And that was a big wake up call. Even though like I haven't lived in the same city as my uncle in years, it was still like to see my aunt go through that, and she's still going through it, has been like, it was a big wake up call. Like, I am not going to put up with crap. If I don't want to do something, I'm not doing it anymore. If something's not working in my life, business wise, personally, there needs to be a change. And it's almost something like a coldness, even though I'm empathetic, it could come off as cold. Like, yeah, I don't want to do that anymore. Yeah, I got asked to volunteer for something. And I'm just like, it was like, hell no in my gut. Like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm sorry, I can't volunteer anymore. Like, my time is too precious. And you would think losing my mom at 21, that would have had that effect on me then. It kind of did. But when I watched my aunt, like, bury her best friend and the love of her life, I was like, no more to things. And it's been like an eye-opening last more than 6 months, to say the least. It's
I love
like
that.
if I have like 2 weeks left, what am I going to do? I'm going to go watch all the live music I can. I'm going to go see Italy. I'm going to do those things. Granted, I have 2 kids at home still, and I try to mirror that. Like, you just got to say yes to things that are the yeses, and if it says no in your gut, you just have to move on. Okay, we're gonna wrap this up and kind of get into the lightning round. I like to ask these questions and you kind of fill in the blank. The most common negative thought women have is
About their body. I'm not good enough. I'm not pretty enough. That's the one I think most women have.
when my inner bully shows up, I now say,
Okay, here you are. I hear you, but you know what? I'm not going to listen to you. I got this. I always tell my man, but I got this, and I'm not going there with you.
self-love is not
Selfish. Self-love is not selfish. Boy, did we learn that as women. You know, it was selfish to take care of yourself. And just like you said, self-love is not selfish. It's necessary.
I love that. Self-love is necessary for sure. Where do we buy your book if we want to purchase the book?
Well, it's on Amazon or anywhere books, Goodreads, anywhere that you find books, but it is on Amazon. And it's also, if you're in Bend, it's in some of the bookstores, Dudley's, I think, and the other bookstores that are in Bend. And yeah, or you can go to my website, healingabc.com, and there's a link to it.
Is there anything you want to add as we wrap up?
I really, really, really want this to be, I want women to take the power back by saying self-love is the most important thing in my life at this stage of my life. And I will no longer, it's like take an oath, I will no longer beat myself up. I will no longer allow negative thoughts to hold me back. Self-love is my superpower. That's what I really want people to understand.
Jackie, thank you for coming and talking to us about the abusive brain chatter and giving us some great action steps going forward. I can see you coming back and talking about other things. And I have to say, I love your Instagram and I love following you on Facebook, and you're just such a wealth of knowledge. Thank you for this gift and this book.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I accept your compliments with gratitude.
Thanks so much for listening to Over 50 and Frank. If today's conversation resonated with you, I'd love it if you'd follow the show, leave a review, or share this episode with a friend who needs to hear it. You can find links, resources, and everything we talked about in the show notes. I'm Shannon, and I'll be back next week with more candid conversations about style, wellness, and life after 50.